Okay, so now our next step is to actually get these libraries loaded so we can get some of that cool Lightbox behavior in our application. So because Lightbox relies on jQuery, let's go ahead and get the jQuery library loaded in our application first. So a site that we're going to become very friendly with is the jQuery homepage. You can find this linked in the show notes. And we aren't going to explore this in too much depth for this project, but where we're going to want to get started is actually loading this library into our project. So if you navigate to the download link at the top, we have several options for including jQuery in our project. One would be actually downloading the entire source code and adding those files in. And another option is called a CDN. So if you scroll down, you can see a CDN link here. So what's a CDN? A CDN is a content delivery network. That's just a very fancy way of saying that this library is being hosted on servers at data centers around the world to make it more easily accessible for us and more performant. Basically, we don't have to include the source files in our application. We can just include the CDN link. So many companies provide a CDN link for jQuery, and I'm the most familiar with the Google CDN. So let's go ahead and use that. Clicking the Google option, we can go ahead and use this 1x snippet here at the top. And all we're going to do is copy and paste this script tag and bring it over to our application. So right below the JavaScript comment, we can go ahead and place this script tag. So now let's confirm that this jQuery library is actually loaded in our application. How are we going to do that? Well, this is where we're actually going to jump into the DevTools. And the DevTools are in the browser. So returning to our page in the browser, I am using Google Chrome. So while all browsers provide DevTools, if you want your page to look like mine and your DevTools to look like mine, Google Chrome might be a good option for you. However, any browser is going to include DevTools, and I will try to call out any exceptions that I can think of as we go along. But to begin, you can access the DevTools by right-clicking, and there's an Inspect Element option at the bottom. So this is going to open up a variety of DevTools that you may or may not be familiar with. But what we're concerned with right now is this tab here that says Sources. So sources are actually is going to actually show us what sources are included in this web page. And so you can see that we have our local sources here, our index HTML and CSS, as well as the external sources that we included. And if we look at this Google API, we can actually see that the jQuery library is successfully being loaded into our project. So to work with Lightbox, we're going to need to go to the Lightbox homepage. So that is linked in the show notes, and we're going to go ahead and follow these initial instructions under this Getting Started section here. So step 1 in getting started with Lightbox is to download the latest version. So there is no CDN available for Lightbox, so what we're going to have to do is include the Lightbox source code into our actual project. So let's go ahead and download this. And once we have that downloaded, we can go ahead and unzip it. And so now that I have the unzipped Lightbox files here, all I'm going to do is actually pull that over to my project. So I have my project conveniently located here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag in this Lightbox source code. And then now within our project here, you can see that the Lightbox source code has been added. So that's step 1. So step 2 says take a look at the bare bones and the working examples that are included in the example folders. So that is generally a great practice when working with a library, is to look at some of the examples that they provide you. If you look at the examples in the Lightbox code, they're actually the ones that are also included on their homepage here. So it's just showing us that same behavior that we saw earlier. All right, so moving on to step 3. Are you ready to set up Lightbox on your page? Yes, we are. So we have 2 links that we need to include here. Because Lightbox is a front-end library, I said it's comprised of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We're going to need to link the Lightbox CSS as well as link the JavaScript. So this first step here is going to be included in the head tag. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this over, and then we'll adjust the path appropriately. So in the head tag below our style sheet that's local, let's go ahead and include that. So one thing when working through documentation for third-party libraries is that it's going to give you kind of generic steps, such as this. It's saying path to Lightbox. We don't have a path folder in our file structure here, so those are the things that you just need to pay attention to, is to make the code work specifically for your application and to not just pull over things blindly when working with a new library. So where is our Lightbox CSS file? Well, if we jump in this Lightbox 2 master folder and we go into the dist folder here, you can see that we have our CSS and JavaScript. So this Lightbox CSS file is actually included here. So what we're going to do is actually just correct this path. In the case of our file or our project, it's actually under the Lightbox 2 master folder. Then within that, it's under dist and then CSS. So this is where the actual Lightbox CSS file is located in our application. You can similarly confirm that it's loaded correctly within the DevTools, but we'll go ahead and do that step after we get the JavaScript included as well. So back to the documentation. There's a path for JavaScript as well, and it says to include it at the bottom of your page before closing the body tag, just where our jQuery library already is. And just reading ahead briefly to step 4, it says that make sure jQuery, which is required by Lightbox, is also loaded. And we want to make sure it's loaded before Lightbox because Lightbox requires jQuery. So jQuery already needs to be loaded, else Lightbox isn't going to understand what jQuery is. So copy and pasting this script tag as well, we're going to do the same thing to correct the path. So underneath our jQuery, let's go ahead and correct this. It's basically going to be in the same location, but located under the JavaScript folder this time. So we're going to correct that CSS to JS and confirm that it's in there. There it is. And now we're good. So let's just confirm these are loaded. Going back to our DevTools here. Okay, we can see that we have additional sources added. So we have our Lightbox 2 master, and now we basically have everything we need to get started.